One of the mothers is the daughter of a senior cabinet minister. This is going mainstream, and I think the only reason it hasn't gone more mainstream is because people don't actually know what's happening. They don't actually know that the council has reverted its program and is spraying glyphosate in their parks and their children's playgrounds. They don't realise that. When they do, I think there'll be hell to pay. But I would just sign off, Mr. Chair, given the ruling that you've made about the moratorium, that this is a limp, yes, Minister type delaying tactic that fools no one.
Thank you. Councillor.
Sure. I'll just follow on from Councillor Watson. There's a clear difference between what we say, which is the policy, and what we do, which is dramatically increasing the use of glyphosate against a background where there are known health effects, and those health effects have been documented by previous councils. I sit on the political advisory group. I've sat on that group since day one. That political advisory group still has not had tabled the operational review. That is how much we are dragging our feet. That is how much we are dragging our feet. So, frankly, I don't have a lot of confidence in this political advisory group and, for that matter, the whole process. And I don't think the public has either, and the public has been closed out of this issue when they have a right to know what is going on and they have a right to have a say. And they are saying very loudly when they know that they do not want the increased use of glyphosate. They do not want glyphosate in their parks, their playgrounds and their urban streets. We are also dragging our feet on the spray register, which is not user-friendly. It's a cumbersome process. So we are reducing people's choice across the road space and across the park space. The people of Auckland expect us to take action on this issue, not to put it off, as you're suggesting, sir, and has occurred on the political advisory group that you chair. So we need to take action. We should have a moratorium now, and I am quite certain, based on the figures that I've seen from the earlier North Shore City days, that we could revert to a spray-free policy without costing any more than what it is costing now. And we need to look at the vested interests and the contracts and the companies that are behind this, because I know from what I have seen and the evidence that I have collected that there are players across industry that have a significant interest in the continued use of sprays like glyphosate against the interests of the community, and that also needs to be exposed.
Thank you. Councillor Webster. Councillor Webster.
Thank you. Gosh, it's the 1st of September, and we've only got a few weeks to go, so it sounds like it. Mr. Chairman, I think this is a very good recommendation, and I'm going to support it. We have done the weed policy. We do have a weed policy, and the whole idea of setting up an political advisory group was to continue to monitor and review. What people actually, and I've heard it from the local board that they would like us to continue. We don't need to go out and do another review of the policy. What people are forgetting is that Auckland is actually 70% rural. Between Franklin and Rodney, it is rural. And we do have a lot of very bad weed problems. And we need to fit what we're using in with what we're trying to do. And that's what the policy is doing. I hear what Councillor Walker is saying and Councillor Watson, but actually we went through quite a bit of time to put this policy together, and we've just got to make it work. And all the issues that Councillor Watson said about reducing the use of glyphosate and reducing chemical is what that political working group is supposed to be looking at and making sure it happens. So, why go and do the whole thing again? And I think it's very important that we continue that and continue to review and fit what what's necessary in various parts of Auckland. You can't just talk about it as if Auckland is urban. We go from Pukekohe to Tihana,
Thank you.
coast to coast, and there's very, very different programs. And it's interesting, Mr. Chair, that one of the things I hear most from my communities is the weed problem they've got. And why isn't council doing anything about it?
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I haven't signed up to 2% rate.
Okay. So, I think the issue here is that we can't really talk about yes minister here. We're talking about a lack of leadership in terms of Mayor not wanting to make a decision, so he's fobbed it off to have a review. Well, I completely don't support that because we do have a really good policy. We're just not implementing it. And so I think this is a very good pullback from this. It's just spending more money on another policy, which is already a good one. It's just our implementation. And obviously, we need a much stronger and more focused political steering group if we're not getting the if we're not well you're one of the members, you're on it.
I'm not the chair.
And so,
Order.
And so the thing is, we really need to focus next term. We need to get to the bottom of it. We've got clear message from people in the audience, but I also believe we have to be fit for purpose as well. And as Councillor Webster said, and I think Neil Henderson alluded to it from the Waitakere Rangers Local Board, there's not the same solution for every area, and there's some areas, we've got huge issues with weeds in our forests, so we've got to look at the right, and we don't want people tramping through spreading carry dieback either. We've got to really fit for purpose for each area. But if it's coming to the point where people are really not accepting in parks and where we've got an intensity of people and children, we've got to look at that, and we've got to bring some real focus to that and start putting our money where our words are in that policy. And so I'm very happy with this. Let's not waste money on doing another lot of paperwork. Let's just do the job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I've got another amendment, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to put it up. I have a seconder.
So you're moving an amendment?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Item
talk to it. It's been seconded
Seconded by
Councillor
Councillor Stewart.
I think there's no councillor in this room who is completely happy about the use of glyphosate, whether you're rural or urban. And what worries me is, year upon year, the same mantra has come before us. People are concerned, they have health concerns. I really am worried about our reliance on the EPA, because I know we haven't had time to read Stefan's tabled report, but in his report he says that the EPA hasn't really examined any studies around glyphosate since 2009. That can only mean it hasn't looked at the World Health Organization's pronouncement last year about its carcinogenic effects. That really concerns me. Is the EPA out of date? He's saying it is. So it's for that, and I was listening intently to Julian, who's collecting signatures, which he shouldn't have to be doing. 24,500 signatures nationwide. And we had about, 3,500 signatures presented to us. My question is, what are we doing about that? We haven't done anything about that. And I think somebody says, this isn't doing it. It's not doing it for me. So the amendment is simply to say, we are acknowledging that concern. And if, George, if you're saying we can't do anything because we're in the throes of the final weeks of this term, one of the things we can do is express our concerns to the new council, so that the new council, one of the first things it does is to look at glyphosate, to see if we are getting the best advice from the EPA, to see if we do need to relook at a moratorium around playgrounds and streets. So that's all it's saying. So I really hope that we can just get on with this, pass it on to the new council if that's what's required. But most definitely we have to do something in light of community concerns.
Thank you. Any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Darby, to the amendment?
To the amendment, or just once?
No, well, you can speak. We'll take it if you want to take it as your
just once.
turn. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, look, thanks, Chair. Look, it's good to be challenged on this. We have to be challenged. We have dragged the chain. It's 3 years almost to the day since we adopted the policy around this table, and I actually think it's a good policy. There's clear objectives and there's a clear action plan. We have definitely lagged on the action plan. There's no question. And thank you, Chair, and you were very willing to support me and others around this table in bringing this up the agenda of the Regional Strategy and Policy work program. Not just today, I'm just saying as a topic over months, and I thank you for that, and I thank you for your chairing of the advisory group. We got caught out, and it was fair to take it on the chin. We hadn't established the best practice reference group. Took us a while to do it. It is now in place. If you look at, I think it's action 4, it requires that best practice reference group not just to report to the political advisory group. The words are, it says report to the highest level, report to the governing body. So the next governing body is due a report from the best practice reference group. Let's mark that down. That is a requirement. That is an action that has to be delivered on. And while I have great concern about the proximity of glyphosate application to human beings, I also have concern about the weed infestations that we have. I'm not going to lose sight of that. I'm a Forest and Bird member. I know Forest and Bird want to continue using some agrochemicals. There is a place and then there is not a place for the application of agrochemicals. And I want to stress that our policy talks about agrochemicals, and it includes glyphosate there, but it also includes the dyes that are used to mark the application, and they are extremely toxic, really toxic. The surfactants are also extremely toxic for the application of agrochemicals. And in some cases, the surfactants and the dyes are more toxic than some of the chemicals. I'm not suggesting more toxic than glyphosate. But when we looked at hot water weed control about 5 years ago at North Shore City, you might remember, Mr. Chair, we were working with what a company now called Biothermal, and they came up with an idea of improving the kill rate with hot water weed control by adding a surfactant, pretty much dishwashing liquid, glorified dishwashing liquid. We went to the ARC, and the scientists identified that the surfactant was actually toxic to water supplies. We thought it was a good idea. Yet the evidence, and we're going to be basing our decisions on good broad range evidence, it identified the toxicity of the surfactant. Never thought of it, and no one had ever checked it. We just thought it was the best idea out of the blocks. So sometimes we jump to conclusions, and our conclusions aren't based on the evidence that others are telling us to abide by. So we've got to get stuck into this, into the policy that we adopted, and make sure it lives through this council. There is some good stuff in there. Continual revision of best practice. No spray register, as Councillor Walker has rightly pointed out, we are lax on. Noting sensitive locations, proximity to human beings. The enhanced environmental outcomes, and that is also the enhanced biodiversity that could be delivered through the control of weeds in the best possible ways, and enabling our communities to be engaged in the control of weeds, getting them on board. So, Mr. Chair, I know that, and I support Mr. Kimpton's work here. He's been instrumental in making sure Dr. Muriel Watts is on that best practice reference group. And she passed, wasn't just about putting her on it, she had to pass the test to be on there like everybody else. And she went through those lenses of examination, and she is on it. I want to hear her views when she comes to the governing body. Is she the minority view on that best practice reference group? Is she with the rest of them? Let's hear it at the next governing body for those of us or those that might be there. So thank you for this. I'll be supporting the primary motions. It's about delivering and enabling that policy to be delivered every day rather than occasionally looking at it and coming back to it.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Well, I do actually. I'll have one go.
Okay, that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find myself agreeing with everyone around the table in most respects. and and also I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll explain why. This is a time for we elected members to acknowledge that our mandate is running out, and in respect of the democratic process, our focus at this point of the political term should be to tidy up outstanding business and to make recommendations, if we feel like it, to the incoming council, but not initiate new policies. And I think your recommendations, as opposed to the officer's recommendations, are totally appropriate. Now, in regard to chemicals and spraying, we have two major challenges in the Auckland region. Obviously, and the other members have referred to these challenges. The first of all, we have a serious problem with environmental weeds, and actually not just in the rural area. Moth plant, for instance, is present right across from the southwest to the east of Auckland, through the factory areas, warehouse areas, and right over to the eastern suburbs, where the moth plant poses a threat to the Hauraki Gulf Island. So it is complicated and it is a challenge. Then we have public areas, streets, public parks, areas where people have roof tanks, where there is a high degree of anxiety, and anxiety based on quite a deal of evidence about glyphosate. And so in terms of the